Shalom, welcome to Tactically Torah. I am Heath Hayes. I wanted to talk to you guys about an experience that I had on Shabbat. It was profound. I loved it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. We got up into Missouri, and that was Friday we got up there. So Shabbat, on 7th day, Saturday, we went up there to the guy's property that we're on, their Shabbat group. They have like a church that is in the community center in a town just to the south of it. So we went there. There was, which they didn't know about it, but there was, a couple who was playing live music, and just, it was on them to bring in the worship, and they shared a quick message and encouraged people to operate in the gifts that they are given. And I wholeheartedly agreed with everything that they had said. One of them I'll probably do a video on, because they had, slides and everything like that, but I'll probably touch on that in some other video. But this specific instance, they were talking about, praying for one another, and just the church body as a whole coming together and operating in the gifts that the Most High has given them, because in these last days it will be required of us, that we would need to perform miracles and pray for one another and prophesy and bring exhortation and encouragement to your brethren, and so on and so forth, and do all of these wonderful things. Well, as people, and the gentleman, he had begun to play his guitar while his wife, I assume was his wife, was speaking, and opened up. They had two mics, one on each side of them, and they had opened up the mics for people to come up and turn, and whether it be sharing a testimony, which there was an awesome testimony about this young woman who she shared the testimony of something that had happened the week prior, or the Shabbat prior, to where the Father had delivered her and helped her to not only forgive someone that she had been harboring some tremendous unforgiveness against, but as well as forgive herself, and she was set free, and she's been on fire for a week now, just because the Father showed her unforgiveness, and she repented and broke and forgave. Tremendous. So when you take a look at, I wish I could remember the verse. I wish I could remember the address. But Yeshua, he's speaking, and he says, I tell you that unless you forgive your brethren their trespasses against you, the Father will not forgive your trespasses. But if you forgive your brother their trespasses, then the Father will forgive yours. So if you want to be forgiven, you must forgive. We saw that in the parable of the man who was forgiven his great debt by the king, and then he went and saw a young man who had just say he owed him $100 versus this man who had owed millions to the king. And he went and shook him down and put him in debtor's prison for the $100 that was owed to him. And the servants that were there, servants of the king, saw this and went back to the king and said, was this not A man who owed you millions that you forgave, and yet he just shook down a man who owed him $100, threw him in debtor's prison. And the king, in modern vernacular, got pissed. He got mad. He said, "No, you come here. I will throw you and your entire family into debtor's prison until you pay back every penny." That's how important it is to forgive. Forgiveness. First of all, forgiveness isn't for the person against you. Forgiveness is for you, because it is going to, good Lord, of these Oklahoma roads, man. It's supposed to be a paved road. This is, oh my gosh. Do you see how much shaking that joker is? Come on, Oklahoma, get with it. Get after it. Fix your roads. Anyways, I digress. The Father requires us to forgive. Forgiveness is not for the person who has wronged you, but it's rather for you, because it eats a hole in your soul. It deteriorates you from the inside out. It destroys your life. There's actually medical evidence of unforgiveness causing disease. You might want to look that up. Anyways, this whole experience, I mean, it was profound. So this young lady, she had finished her testimony. Then there was another person, and then another person. And I've been, from the moment the mic opened, I just had this word burning in my heart. And finally, it was open where I could stand up and say something. And I believe I was the last person to actually stand up and say something. But I just shared the word. It was John 4, somewhere around chapter 20, or verse 20, I mean. And it's Yeshua. He goes to see the woman at the well. And he's talking to her, and they're talking about salvation and so on and so forth. And Yeshua says that there will come a day where neither you or the Jews will even worship on this mountain. But the hour has come, and now is, where true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. For such worshipers, the Father's desire to worship Him. For the Father is spirit. So yeah. Now the message that's been burning in my heart is the marriage of the two. See, it's not enough to live a life of obedience and not have fruit of the Spirit. Nor is it enough to live a life of disobedience and have abundant fruit of the Spirit. Because then you end up in a Matthew 7 situation where many will come to Yeshua and they'll say, "Did we not prophesy in your name? And in your name did we not perform many miracles? And in your name did we not do all these great and wonderful things?" And he's going to say one thing to them: "Depart from me, you worker of lawlessness. I never knew you. You don't know me." See, it's not enough to be obedient out of legalism. It is obedience out of the desire to please the Most High, because they are His ways. Because what makes Daddy happy is that I obey. What makes me happy is that my children listen to me. I tell them one time, "Honey, shut the door." If I get to the third time where I'm saying, "Honey, shut the door," I'm mad. I'm getting up, I'm spanking a butt. right? So that's kind of the deal. You know, it makes me happy that my kids listen to me the first time. You know, so that whole bit of "Depart from me, you worker of lawlessness, I never knew you." He requires relationship. It's not just enough to keep the commands and keep the moedim, though it's good. See, because the Pharisees and the scribes, they kept the commands, they kept the moedim, they knew it better than anybody else. But they neglected to believe in the one who gave them to begin with, who was Yeshua. So whether it's you believe, you can believe in anything, but if you don't believe in Yeshua, you're not going to make it your way to the reign. See, we've got to know the Torah, know the laws in and out so intricately, and desire to keep them as we live our lives and walk our lives by the Spirit. See, Paul talks a lot about this, and a lot of people get Paul wrong. They say that, oh, well, he talks against the Torah. No, he talks about the marriage of the two, what it looks like. Read Romans. Read Galatians. Read the Corinthians, man. He's constantly talking about, you know, and you also have to read in context, because he'll throw in a big T or a little t, or in your King James, it's the big L or the little l, you know, talking about the law of sin and death. There's a law that is the Torah, the commands. There is a law of the Spirit. Those are three separate laws in and of themselves. So you have to have discernment to know which one he's talking about. But when he talks about operating in the Spirit, see, if you're operating in the Spirit's naturally going to lead you to do the commands to begin with. Because that's the job description of the Ruach HaKodesh, to lead you into truth. And really the same, if you're keeping the Torah out of relationship for the Most High, then that ought to lead you into fruit of the Spirit. They work cohesively together. But if you're far in one ditch, you're going to neglect the other. Or if you're far in this ditch, you're going to neglect. It's like if you're far in the ditch of the Torah, and you're way far over here in Judaism or whatever, you're neglecting the Spirit. But if you're all the way over here in this ditch of the Spirit, and those laws and commands are for the Jews, and so on and so forth, what good does either profit you? What good? There is none. About the only good you get out of it, out of this side, is, you know, maybe you can claim you believe in Jesus, that he is the true Messiah, Yeshua, the Son of the living God. But even then, we see him say, many will come to me. Now, it's almost as if, like, the church believes that's the standard. Oh, well, if you're performing miracles, if you're prophesying and you're doing all these great and wonderful things, that's evidence that you are saved. No, it's not. The evidence that you are saved is that you're being obedient. The performance of miracles is, and the prophecy and operating in the fruit of the Spirit is just that, fruit of the Spirit. He requires both. It's not just enough to have one. It's not. So we ought to be keeping the laws and the commands and observing the Moedim and keeping the Sabbath holy and doing all of these wonderful things that the Father had lined out for us so that we could achieve righteousness through our relationship with him. And then we go out and work the fruit of the Spirit as the Spirit operates within in us. We see the Father, and we see our brethren who is in need and requires help. And you know, sometimes that help that is required is like when Peter says, silver and gold have I none, but what I do have I give to you. Now rise, brother, and walk. Miracles. That's when it's genuine. That's when it's real. That's when you hear, well done, my good and faithful servant. Enter into the kingdom that I have prepared for you. That's what it's like. That's what he desires when he talks about there will come a day, and now is, where true worshipers worship the Father in spirit and in truth. The marriage of obedience to the Torah and fruit and evidence of the Spirit operating within you, where you are joyous, you are a pleasure to be around, you are kind, you prick the heart and soul of your brother around you anytime that they get out of hand, and you bring them back into the threshold of the Most High. It's all of these things. It is miracles, it is prophesying, it is exhortation, it is, speaking well of another behind their back. It is all of that. That's what the Father requires of us today. We're living in the end of days. If that's the case, which I personally believe we are, that is how we need to operate. Silver and gold have I none, but what I have, the abundance of the Spirit of the Most High within me, and the authority that I have in the blood of Yeshua, my Messiah, I speak to you, and every sin and every ailment that is come upon you, and I tell you to be healed, be delivered right now in the name of Jesus. Be delivered in the name of Yeshua. Now rise up and walk. That boldness in the Spirit. And I'm speaking to myself just as much as anybody else. I'm definitely speaking to myself. See, because that's a whole nother level of obedience. That's a whole other level. Just to step out and operate in the power of the Spirit. To speak to someone you've never known before and have compassion on them and tell them, you know what? I love you because my Father loves you. Now let's see you made well. Brother has a back ailment, or somebody dealing with chronic migraines. Be healed in the name of Yeshua. See, Mark 11:23 and 24 says, speak to this mountain for it to be moved, and therefore it will be moved. Again, I tell you, this is 24, that whatsoever you say in faith, believing fully in your heart, that thing you will have. That includes healing. It's important. Probably the most important thing, just the most important thing of these days. See, because I believe that when Revelation speaks about those who maintain the testimony of Yeshua and guard to keep his commands, yes, they're doing exactly that. They maintain the testimony of Yeshua. See, it's not the testimony of, it's not just what he did for them. It's not. It's the fact that their lives are reflecting everything that Yeshua did on the earth. You think about that. They maintained the testimony of Yeshua. They reflected them. We reflect him to the T of everything that he embodied, everything that was within him. That same spirit that was within him now dwells within us. And that because they maintained that testimony, they did the same things that he did. And they would guard the commands of the Most High, knowing that through those commands is the achievement of righteousness. It is the attribution of righteousness through the Most High. It is how the Father sees the evidence of his work within us. And it's how he receives love. That's just what's been burning on me, burning on my heart. We need to do more. It's not enough. It's not enough to just keep the commands. It's not enough to just perform miracles. It's not enough to just prophesy. We got to do it all. It's not just one or the other. It's every bit of it. Then you will be chastised for my name's sake. That's what he says. The words of Yeshua. See, because it's pricking my heart too. It's getting to me. You know, because I see moments and I see times, and this is just within me, where I see an opportunity to step out in boldness and faith and touch a brother or touch a sister and be like, you know what? The Father loves you and he wants to heal you right now in the name of Yeshua. And I'm going to pray a prayer of faith over you right now, and it's going to be done, because the effectual, fervent prayer of a righteous man avails much. Meaning he hears my prayer because I keep and obey the commands of the Most High, and he has attributed his righteousness to me. Therefore he will hear me and he will answer my prayer. And yet I don't step out. Which means clearly that I still have a certain level of fear of man that I have to overcome. It's self-reflection. Something that we've all got to get past, be done with.